Eternal judgment. We must never compromise the message of judgment that awaits all who reject God's redemptive plan. Here's Dr. Gene Getz.
Hebrews 12:25-29 is pretty heavy. See that you do not reject the one who speaks. For if they did not escape when they rejected him who warned them on earth. And here I think the author is trying to help these believers have a message to communicate to these people who have rejected everything in full light of what God had done. And he goes back to the Old Testament. He says, for if they did not escape when they rejected him who warned them on earth, and he did, as we saw through incredible revelations. And it's unbelievable if you read through the Old Testament how many years would go by where God would tolerate unbelievable sin. Years, generations, before he would pull it in and say, okay. And then they would repent and he'd forgive them. Bring them back. They'd turn right around. Read the book of Judges. Read the book of Judges again and again and again. Now, that's God's grace. That's God's patience. But they didn't escape. And eventually, God dealt with it. And especially with Israel. So, if they did not escape when they rejected him who warned them on earth, even less will we be if we turn away from him who warns us from heaven. God has spoken from heaven. And he's speaking from heaven through this letter. His voice shook the earth at that time. But now he's promised, yet once more I will shake not only earth, but also heaven. Read the epistles of Peter. Now this expression, yet once more, indicates the removal of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what is not shaken might remain, that is, the eternal things. Therefore, since we're receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us hold on to grace. By it we may serve God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. In other words, God's grace extends to all. There comes a point, however, where there will be judgment. And so the basic principle is, though we should do all we can to demonstrate grace in our relationships with unbelievers, and we should, we must never compromise the message of judgment that awaits all who reject God's redemptive plan. There are some preachers today that won't speak about separation from God. They won't use the word hell. And yet the Bible speaks of that subject deliberately. The question is, why do some Christian leaders go to extremes in presenting the message of God's love and grace versus the message of eternal judgment and separation from God? Well, it's easy to focus on God's love because we don't like that other subject. We don't want to focus on his judgment. And I've shared with you that I don't like the subject of hell. I think about hell very long. It drives me crazy when I think of the implications. But I believe in it because the Bible teaches it. Just because we don't feel comfortable with it doesn't mean we shouldn't speak it, because it's part of the whole counsel of God. We can focus on God's judgment and not on his love. And there are some people, by the way, that I hear them speak about hell, and I would say, where is the compassion? Where is the love? Where it's almost like they're angry. They believe they're God. And they attack people with the subject of hell. And I don't sense any love. And when I hear that, I say, man, what is that person's problem? They're almost enjoying the subject. Something wrong psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. The Bible teaches both. And I believe here we see that balance. Be patient. Try to deal with the Esau's who've sold their birthright. But don't compromise. There's judgment for that kind of unbelief and that kind of rejection. Well, at this point, he segues. He gives guidelines for Christian living and how to follow godly leaders as he wraps up this letter.